How's it going, everybody? NBA 2K25 released their sixth roster update of the season. We're going to be going through and breaking it down. A good friend of the channel, Pete Toll, aka PT Sports 84, already did a breakdown video going through all of the minutia. I'm not going to do that, just focusing mainly on the major bullet points for all 30 teams. Starting with the Philadelphia 76ers, who are 19 and 27 on the season, 4 and 7 since the last update. They are 11th in the Eastern Conference. They have been ravaged by injuries to players like Joel Embiid, Jared McCain, etc. And a lot of the guys at the end of their bench have had to step up and fill in. Eric Gordon is one such player. Back in the starting lineup, shooting 53% from three over the last 11 games. The Milwaukee Bucks are 26 and 19, 7 and 3 since the last update. They are fourth in the Eastern Conference. Giannis Antetokounmpo is basically the Eastern Conference MVP, averaging 33 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists in 35 minutes a game, also shooting 63% from the field. He is carrying the Bucks. Dame Lillard, the All-Star reserves were just announced, and he did make the team. I'm going to be doing All-Star content in a separate video. Chris Middleton, he's been coming off the bench, moved to the bench at the start of of this roster cycle. He's on a minutes limit, so it just made sense to move him there. And he's really been up and down, highlighted by he had 22 points against the Utah Jazz, 10 of 13 from the field, and that game was sandwiched in between two 0-point games in losses to the Blazers and Clippers. So that's basically the Chris Middleton experience right now. They are hoping for a little more consistency. Maybe they can get Jimmy Butler at the trade deadline. We will see. Middleton would definitely be the part of the matching salary in such a deal. The Chicago Bulls are 20 and 28 on the season, 3 and 8 since the last update, 10th in the Eastern Conference. Patrick Williams has lost his starting job. Coming off the bench now, moving to small forward also. The Bulls are starting four guards, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Lonzo Ball, and Zach LaVine. And then and Josh Giddey, and then Lonzo Ball has been the sixth starter, essentially, when one of those guys is sidelined. I believe Kobe White was out for a little while, and then Zach LaVine, he missed the game that Kobe White came back for. And Williams moved to small forward. Matas Buzelis has been the backup power forward on the Bulls. He hasn't really been very good, but, whatever. I mean, Patrick Williams hasn't exactly been blowing things out of the water either way. And this team will probably look a little bit different after the trade deadline. The Bulls kind of have to blow it up. They're 10th again, and they are stumbling into the deadline. I think it's over for them finally. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 38 and 9, 5 and 5 since the last update. Though they are still first in the Eastern Conference. Their defense fell off a cliff in January. Injuries ate through all their depth, although you couldn't tell it from looking at the 2K roster. They don't have anybody sidelined, but Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, and Dean Wade are all out with injury, which has forced Max Strus back into the starting lineup as along with Mitchell and Garland. Evan Mobley missed 4 games. So when you factor in basically all four of their best defensive players have been out, that kind of explains why they've slipped. I believe they slipped to like 9th in defense overall since then. But worth noting that Mobley and Garland did make the All-Star team as reserves. Boston Celtics, 33 and 15, 6 and 5 since the last update, second in the Eastern Conference. Tatum and Brown both go down a point. Brown did make the All-Star team, as the coaches care way more about win-loss record than they do about whatever stats players are putting up. I kind of respect it, although I think Brown is super overrated, certainly by 2K Sports. I don't think he's a 92 or 93 overall. He'd be like an 89 for me. But needless to say, I'd said that I wasn't going to get into the minutia. So Tatum and Brown both struggling with their shot in this cycle. 41% from Tatum from the field, 31% from three, down to 22 points per game. On the season, he's 27. And then Brown, 43% from the field, 29% from three. Overall, teams just have a better idea of how to defend the Celtics of late. If you stay home on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, the rest of it, and not let their shooters kill you, they aren't really good enough one-on-one to beat a lot of teams. So although it is worth noting that Kristaps Porzingis, he had his season-high 34 points last night. He'll probably be a big part of keeping teams honest. Let's go over to the Los Angeles Clippers, who are 27 and 20, our first Western Conference team. 7-3 since the last update, 6th in the Western Conference. Kawhi Leonard returned from injury. He's averaging 16 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists in only 24 minutes a game, so 2K dropped him by 2 points. Last year he averaged 24, 6, and 4. So his numbers are certainly down. He's coming back from injury. Probably not going to be the same MVP caliber player that he's been in the past moving forward. Norm Powell, he got snubbed from the All-Star game. There's a lot of talk that he should have been possibly made it. He's been Zach LaVine West, essentially. 24 points per game, up from last year's 14 points per game. And Ivica Zubac has been a big part of what they're doing as well. He has been Jarrett Allen East, or Jarrett Allen West, I should say, averaging 15 points and 13 rebounds, up from 12 and 9 last year. And Zubac has anchored what has been the number 2 defense in the NBA. Remember when the Lakers traded him for Mike Muscala, and now AD is crying about he has to play center all the time? Another life. Memphis Grizzlies, they are 31-16, third in the Eastern Conference, 7-2 since the last update. They really didn't get much of improvement from 2K Sports. Desmond Bane's been on the comeback trail since he went through an early season slump. And then Luke Kennard, he got a +2, I believe. He is leading the league in three-point percentage at 49%. For the most part, no news is good news for the Grizzlies. Ja Morant hasn't pulled a gun on anybody, and no new injuries to report. If anything, Gigi Jackson actually came back. He's been pretty meh, but doesn't really fit on a team with contending aspirations, as he's really just a volume scorer, and they don't need volume scorers when everybody's healthy. So he could be somebody who's on the move at the deadline as they look for veteran help. They are also a Jimmy Butler possibility, although he allegedly does not want to go there. They have been looking for a mercurial small forward since they parted ways with Dylan Brooks. The Atlanta Hawks, 22-25, 3-6 since the last update, 9th in the Eastern Conference. They have lost 6 in a row. Jalen Johnson, where he at? He is out for the season with shoulder surgery. So that 6-game losing streak, he actually was playing for a lot of those. They are reeling right now, and they've fallen down to 9th. So with the deadline around the corner, they got to figure out whether or not they're going to be buyers or sellers. I think they originally wanted to trade Clint Capella, but with the injury to Johnson, they kind of need him to be the backup for Onyeka Okongwu, who was recently anointed to the starting lineup in advance of the trade deadline. Okongwu has just been outplaying Capella for most of the year. He is 6 years younger. Capella used to be a lot more athletic than he is now at the age of 30. And Vit Krejci, he is up to a 75 in this update. He has been the starting small forward with Zachary Risacher out with injury. He's averaged 11 points, 4 assists, 46% from the field, 38% from 3. Trae Young led the league in assists per game, but was snubbed from the All-Star team. Too bad, so sad. Going over to the Miami Heat, who are 23-23, 7th in the Eastern Conference, but 4-5 since the last update. Haywood Highsmith over me! Jimmy was told he would be benched because, no shit, you're intentionally sandbagging on the court. So he is suspended until the trade deadline. We'll see what happens after that. But the big development for them, aside from that, is Kel'el Ware has become the starting center on the team, sliding Bam Adebayo down to power forward. Ware in 5 starts, 15 points per game, 9 rebounds, a steal and a block, shooting 51% from the field, 44% from 3, hitting 2 threes per game. So he's provided the floor stretching next to Bam that they have needed. And it allows Bam to play more as a roamer defensively. That seems to be the style of defense he likes to play rather than banging. And Kel'el Ware, obviously, at 7 foot with a pretty good athleticism for that size. Really good at protecting the rim. Although isn't the greatest help defender or anything yet, he's still a 20-year-old rookie, but that will come in time. He definitely got a steal in the draft here with Ware. Going over to the Charlotte Hornets, 12-31, 4-5 since the last update. They are 14th in the Eastern Conference. LaMelo is out for a week due to an ankle sprain. Brandon Miller, he is out for the season with I believe it was a wrist injury. He's having wrist surgery. So the Hornets, the good news is, they were blown out by the tanking Nets by 21 points. The good news is they're already 14th, so even without their starting backcourt, they can't possibly be worse than the Wizards, right? Although KJ Simpson and Nick Smith Jr. are out to test that theory, as they both shot 1 of 10 from the field each against the Brooklyn Nets. So, I mean, I've been wrong before. The one bright spot that the team has is Mark Williams, who during this cycle he averaged 22 points and 12 rebounds on 60% from the field. He has been a revelation for them since returning from his year-long absence. And I guess I should have taken some sort of notes on Josh Okogie, who was acquired in the trade, in the Nick Richard trade. And he's been solid. He started in their last game. Definitely somebody who is going to be providing a lot of value. He's probably better than Josh Green, to be honest, and makes a fraction of the money. So if they can move, just because they acquired him as kind of like a salary throw-in doesn't mean that they don't have like long-term aspirations for them. He's one of the few guys on the team that plays any semblance of defense. So I think he's a good culture guy for them to add. All right, Utah Jazz, 10-35, 1-8 since the last update. They are 15th in the Western Conference. Keontae George lost his starting job to Isaiah Collier, who is a +4 in this roster update. The last game the Utah Jazz plays, they started Collier, Colin Sexton, and then their front court was Bryce Sensabaugh, Micah Porter, and then Drew Eubanks against the Golden State Warriors. They do this because they wanted Golden State to win the game so they can continue tanking and get the worst record in the league. As an example, against OKC, prior to that, they started their full front court is healthy. Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, and Walker Kessler all started. They start all three of them against the Thunder because, even if they all play, they probably aren't going to beat the Thunder. And then against a team that they possibly could beat if they played all their guys, they sit them all. So it's an all-time tank job that they're doing in Utah. It's only January. It's not even March yet, and they're doing this shit. Sacramento Kings, 24-22, 6-4 since the last update, 10th in the Western Conference. And the news just broke yesterday that they are going to consider dealing De'Aaron Fox, as it's apparent that Fox is not considering signing an extension with the Kings. So he mentioned that to the Sacramento brass that, maybe you should consider trading me ahead of the deadline. The reason for this timing, of course, which we'll get into, Fox said he didn't want to be just making the playoffs, as part of the factors of whether he would sign an extension with Sacramento. Even with the Mike Brown firing, where they've gone 11-4 with Doug Christie, they're still only in 10th. So that, they're not even just making the playoffs, they're just making the play-in because of how stacked the Western Conference is. So his preference is the Spurs because they have Wemby. He wants to win. Duh, that makes sense. But the reason of the timing is if Fox is dealt now, he can sign an extension in 6 months. Whereas if he's traded in, let's say, the offseason, he wouldn't be able to sign an extension until around the trade deadline of that following season, where he would have, at that point, it's 50-50, because, if it doesn't work out with the new team, then they're not going to want to sign him to an extension. But if he gets traded now, he's got a little bit of time, to for the team to make their pitch and, or if they don't like him, move him along. I personally don't know if Fox is the greatest fit for the Spurs, but I'll get into that in their section. Going over to and I guess worth noting, Domantas Sabonis snubbed from the All-Star team. There is justice in this world. Leading the league in rebounds, but I think that's such an empty stat, whatever. Going over the New York Knicks, who are 31-16, 6-2 since the last update. They are third in the Eastern Conference. Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns were both named starters to the All-Star game. Probably the last time that's happened for the Knicks, having two starters named. It's probably Walt Clyde Frazier and Willis Reed, I would imagine. I think Towns is the last center to get named to the All-Star game for the Knicks. This is the last starting center since Amari Stoudemire, I think. Before that was probably Patrick Ewing. So, and then Jalen Brunson, of course, is the best point guard in franchise history besides Walt Clyde Frazier. The Knicks have been extremely healthy this year. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby have yet to miss a game, whereas Brunson and Josh Hart have only missed one game each. Towns is the one who has missed any time, missing a total of 5 games so far. He is playing with an injured thumb, but he's playing through it, so his numbers might slip a little in subsequent updates, drop down to a 92 or 91, depending. Brunson might see his numbers go up because if you recall last year, his numbers didn't go up until Julius Randle was out with his shoulder injury. So, what a luxury for the Knicks to have that their star player is. One of their star players is struggling a little bit, so one other one can pick things up. Los Angeles Lakers, 26-19, 6-3 since the last update, fifth in the Western Conference. Anthony Davis named to the All-Star reserves today. LeBron James obviously voted in as a starter. AD is out for at least a week due to an ankle sprain. I would anticipate that probably is not going to affect his availability for the All-Star game. But if it does, whatever, somebody else who got snubbed will get to make it on. Jared Vanderbilt, he just returned from being out for, I think, close to a year. He's looked pretty good so far, giving a lot of energy. He had surgery on both of his feet during the offseason. Dorian Finney-Smith, worth noting, he switched to, the 2K's changed his position to small forward, which the reason they do this is because he hasn't been playing at all with Rui Hachimura. I personally would just move LeBron back to his native small forward and have both of those guys as power forwards. Especially since with talk that AD wants to play power forward, he doesn't want to be a center. The Lakers might acquire a center at the trade deadline. They've of course been linked to Jonas Valanciunas since the offseason. So if AD moves to power forward, LeBron is going to move to small forward, you guys. So maybe make the change now rather than like dance around like why are we changing DFS when he's been playing power forward for pretty much his whole career. Anyway, going over to the Orlando Magic, 24-24, 2-7 since the last update though. Woof, falling to sixth in the Eastern Conference, and they've fallen from fourth. They were seventh a couple games ago, but I think Miami lost, and now they're in seventh. But Paulo Banchero, he's played 9 games since returning. He was available for this entire cycle. 21 points, 7 rebounds, 4.6 assists per game, but only shot 40% from the field. So struggling a little bit, wasn't as good as he was in the first 5 games before he got hurt. So he's a big part of why the Magic have not been playing as well as they did earlier. Jalen Suggs has also been missing a lot of games due to injury. He's probably the most important player on this team, to be quite honest. Dallas Mavericks, 26-22, but 4-6 since the last update. 9th in the Western Conference. They are just holding on for dear life with Lucas sidelined. Derek Lively, he just went down for the year. Not for the year, I'm sorry. Went down out for 2 to 3 months. So roughly until like about the playoffs, most likely. Maxi Kleber, he also went down with injury. So they are really strapped in the big man department. Dwight Powell's also been out of the lineup, I think. I don't know if he came back, but he's missed pretty much the last 2 weeks. So really, it's just Daniel Gafford. They signed Kyler Kelly on a 2-way because they just needed big man depth. Markieff Morris, they've wasted a roster spot on him all year. He hasn't been a factor at all. So Olivier Maxence Prosper, he's been in the rotation this year. He's due for a big role increase. They're going to have to play P.J. Washington's a little bit more as like a small ball 5. Otherwise, they're going to have to make some sort of trade. I'm kind of at a loss of who they exactly could trade. Maybe like a Jalen Hardy or something. Going over to the Brooklyn Nets. 15-33, but 2-9 since the last update. They are 13th in the Eastern Conference. They can't out-tank those pesky Blazers and Hornets. They blew them both out by 20, accounting for 2 of their wins in this cycle. There's not really a ton to talk about here. Cam Johnson probably is going to be playing for another team after the trade deadline in about a week. Bojan Bogdanovic and Ben Simmons are guys who probably would be bought out. Nothing else to really talk about here with them. Denver Nuggets, 28-19, 4th in the Western Conference, 7-4 since the last update. Although they are losers of the last 3, they are 4th in the Western Conference. Jokic obviously named All-Star starter. He's been playing like the MVP of the league once again, and Jamal Murray has been playing a lot better, as they've been playing him at shooting guard next to Russell Westbrook. The Nuggets starting Russell Westbrook has really galvanized the team. In doing so, they've bumped Christian Braun up to the 3, Michael Porter Jr. at the 4, and then Aaron Gordon has been playing off the bench at the 4 as he works his way back from injury. So we'll see if this holds during the playoffs. Maybe if they they're on a 3-game losing streak, so if it becomes a 4 or 5-game losing streak, they'll probably go back to their normal lineup. But so far, so good, I think. And the trade deadline is around the corner, but I don't know what they can do to reasonably add to this team. As the two guys that they want to trade, Dario Saric and Zeke Naji, have some of the worst contracts in the NBA, and they have basically no draft picks that they can trade. So good luck to them. Nice job, Calvin Booth. And then the Indiana Pacers, 26-20, 6-2 since the last update. They are surging, 5th in the Eastern Conference. Pascal Siakam made the All-Star team. Aaron Nesmith, he came back from injury, so he's been back in the starting lineup with Benedict Mathurin coming off the bench. Nothing else to really talk about. Thomas Bryant, he went up 2 points in this update. He's been, a serviceable rotation big. New Orleans Pelicans, 12-36, 5-5 since the last update, so they are surging. 14th in the Western Conference. Obviously, Zion Williamson is a big part of that. He returned from injury. He's averaging 25 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 58% from the field, 25 points in only 26 minutes per game. But he's only played 7 of the 12 games that he's been available for since he came back from injury. So that's not great. Trey Murphy III, 24 points per game over the last 9. He's been filling the Brandon Ingram void, who hasn't played in 2 months now. Also, obviously, filling in the scoring void anytime Zion has to sit. CJ McCollum's been pretty good as well. But obviously, based on their record, they're even if they went 10-0 the next during this next cycle, they're still completely out of the playoff picture. So they probably will be sellers at the deadline. Guys like Daniel Tice, Javonte Green are probably going to be on the move. They'll take a second-round pick for Javonte Green, I think, very happily from a contender or something. The Detroit Pistons are 23-23, 4-5 since the last update, 8th in the Eastern Conference. Jaden Ivey is, for the most part, out indefinitely after having a leg injury. Cade Cunningham, he is up to a 90 overall in this update. +1 to his badges, which I guess I should have gone over for Kel'el Ware, but just focusing on Cunningham's badges real quick. What was the one that got added for him? They added Dimer. They had, and they gave him a gold. He did not have Dimer at all at any level prior to this, so great job, 2K Sports. They also, believe, gave a +1 to Break Starter and Versatile Visionaries. Those used to be silvers. That's pretty much it. The Detroit Pistons have been so Kay's been at the point guard. Tim Hardaway Jr. moved down to the 2 in Ivy's absence, and Ausar Thompson has been starting at the 3. I guess let's go back real quick to Kel'el Ware, because he was one of 3 players who had a badge update in the cycle, so I'll just focus on those. For the most part, no complaints here. And then hopping along back to the Toronto Raptors, who are 15-32, 7-2 since the last update, 12th in the Eastern Conference. They're going nuts, right? Well, no, actually, no, not really. They just got to an extremely easy part of their schedule. For example, they beat the Wizards by 24 last night, but they did double their win total in this cycle. So they have been less shitty than their recent opponents. I have nothing else to add there. Scotty Barnes went up 2 points, but he didn't exactly shoot the ball very well during the cycles, shooting something like 40%, 28% from 22% from 3. But he's basically a Jalen Johnson equivalent. I don't know what the Raptors are doing with the rest of their team. They should be sellers at the deadline, obviously. Guys like Kelly Olynyk might be on the move to contenders. Bruce Brown is somebody that they've been trying to get rid of since they've acquired him. I don't know. And Chris Boucher also, who I believe is in a contract year. Going over the Houston Rockets, 32-14, second in the Western Conference, 7-2 since the last update. Jabari Smith Jr. went down with injury, but they are 10-3 without him because they've started Amen Thompson at power forward instead of he was a shooting guard prior to this. He might be the starting point guard next year. What can't he do? I don't know. Happy birthday, by the way. Turns 22 today, and he had a badge update in this roster, +3 to his badges, going to 16 total, and then a couple Others, I believe, High Flying Denier is like a +1. Off Ball Pest is a completely new badge, going from none to gold. Rebound Chaser, I believe, is up from silver. Challenger was an addition. And then On Ball Menace is an addition. So he's been really, a really crazy two-way player. His stat line is insane. 19 points per game, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.5 steals, 1.5 blocks in 39 minutes per game for this update cycle. And again, like what a what a luxury to have. Like he probably is going to be the starting power forward even after Jabari Smith Jr. comes back, but they could conceivably they have a team option on Fred VanVleet. They could just hand Amen Thompson the starting point guard role during the offseason as well if they wanted to. And Jalen Green also 86 overall. He went up to. He's been pretty good during this cycle. 25 points per game, 47 from the field, 43 from three, 91 from the free throw line. Finally showing the promise that he displayed when he was drafted second overall 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Time flies. San Antonio Spurs 20-24. 2-5 since the last update, so they are not flying right now. 12th in the Western Conference, fading out of the play-in mix. They are being linked to De'Aaron Fox, which would make sense because they obviously have they need a point guard of the future. They have Chris Paul as a rental for this year. But does Fox make sense for a Victor timeline? Fox is 27, Victor is 21. Fox relies on his speed. And he's 27, which is when players generally start to lose their speed. So really, like, he has a 3 to 5 year window, and he's not an all-star. Like he hasn't been an all-star in a couple of years. He only made the team once, I believe. Not really an all-NBA player. Is it really worth going like all in for a championship right now? Because by the time the rest of the team is ready, is Fox still going to be good enough to be like their second best player? I'm not so sure. I guess it is also worth considering, like Victor Wembanyama himself, does he have the body type where thinking so long term makes sense? Like, what if he has the Yao career where Yao was basically done at the age of 27 due to foot injuries? Wembanyama hasn't had any injuries or anything to be worried about, but I'm not a doctor. I don't know. I'm not qualified to make those decisions, those difficult decisions that Spurs are going to make. Maybe they only get like 2 runs or something out of Wemby, so maybe they want to go in earlier now so that they can reload for like a second run later. Trade De'Aaron Fox if he doesn't work out for like, a comparable, another comparable level player once that player becomes available. I don't know. It's worth noting that Wembanyama himself did go down a point in this update. Had a couple of rough shooting games against Memphis, I guess. I don't know what's going on there. Worth noting that Stephon Castle, he is a +2, as is Harrison Barnes. Stephon Castle, 18 points per game for the cycle. He is starting over Jeremy Sohan. Harrison Barnes moved to the 4, essentially. Not that 2K Sports accounted for that. I don't think they realized. But that is something that they have done and probably is going to stick for the rest of the year moving forward, as obviously Sohan isn't the greatest fit with Wembanyama. And it's worth noting that Sohan has basically been the backup center behind Wemby during this time. So, a lot of interesting develops in San Antonio. It has not been boring this season at all. Phoenix Suns 24-22, 7-3 since the last update, surging. Oh wait, no, they're still 9th in the Western Conference. Nick Richards, he was acquired in trade with the Hornets. He's a +2 in this update. Since the trade, he's averaging 11 points, 10 rebounds, a double-double, 60% from the field, and the team has gone 5-2. So overall, I think that's a really great pickup for the team. They only traded 3 second-round picks, and they moved off of Josh Okogie, who wasn't really playing for them. And they just needed to get rid of Mason Plumlee and Jusuf Nurkic, and also, they just had such net negative players as their starting centers. I know 2K hasn't dropped Nurkic beyond. He should be a lot lower than this. He's been pretty bad on the court, even though he started X number of games. And Plumlee, he's okay. He's just a veteran backup. Nothing to write home about. He's not really lifting the team. So it's like just getting an actual starting caliber player has appeared to do the Suns It's made them better. They've improved on the margins. I think it's a plus trade for them. OKC Thunder, 37-9, 7-3 since the last update. They've had really no major changes. They just boosted Isaiah Joe and Kaysen Wallace a +2. They're just cleaning up some stuff. No real major changes necessary. Isaiah Hartenstein was out due to injury during the cycle, but it hasn't affected them at all. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, basically your top 2 MVP player throughout the season. He's a big part of why OKC is the top defensive team in the NBA, even though Hartenstein and Holmgren have missed most of the season due to injury. And I guess the big mover for them this update was Brandon Carlson, a +3. He's been on a couple 2-way contracts. Essentially is the next Chris Boucher, Jay Huff type, skinny stretch 5. But he is actually good at that role, and it's important to NBA teams nowadays. He's also a pretty good shot blocker. So he's somebody that I don't know if they actually have room to. Well, they're going to have to make room for him. They'll probably move off of somebody like an Ousmane Dieng, who hasn't really worked out since being drafted by the team. I think they do eventually want to promote AJ Mitchell once he comes back from injury. So I would assume that Dieng is probably the odd man out as far as roster spots go, so that they can make space for Carlson long term. Minnesota Timberwolves, they are 26-21 on the season, 6-4 since the last update, 7th in the Western Conference. Dante DiVincenzo, he became the starting point guard, but then he got hurt, going down with basically a turf toe injury. Mike Conley had bottomed out prior to that, but has since returned to the starting lineup with DiVincenzo's injury, and similar to Eric Gordon, just a little time off has helped him a little bit. He is shooting 50% from 3 since re-entering the starting lineup, so hopefully he's able to maintain. And they've been playing a little bit better defensively. We have a +2 update to Jaden McDaniels, +1 for Rudy Gobert. Portland Trailblazers, 18-29 since the last update, 5-5 since the 18-29 on the season, 5-5 since the last update, 13th in the Western Conference. Whew, going through 30 teams is a lot. Shaedon Sharpe has got demoted from the starting lineup. Scoot Henderson was briefly in the starting lineup, but they are since going with a jumbo lineup of basically Toumani Camara, who was at power forward prior to this. He's their 2 guard right now with Jeremy Grant and Denny Avdia rounding out 2 through 4. The Golden State Warriors, 24-23, 5-5 since the last update, 11th in the Western Conference. All of the power forwards on this team have been hurt, Kyle Anderson included, although they haven't accounted for that in the 2K roster, part of why they signed Jackson Rowe to a 2-way contract. They've been starting Gary Payton II at the 4. Dennis Schroeder, he got demoted from the starting lineup. -1 to a 79, was an 80. He was an 83 at the time of the trade from the Nets. In 17 starts with the Golden State Warriors, averaged 11 points and 4 assists, but only 36% from the field, 28% from 3. Really ended up being a dud of a trade when they sent DeAnthony Melton to the Brooklyn Nets for Schroeder. Melton's out for the season, but the Schroeder addition didn't really move the needle at all. And to be quite honest, it never made sense. Using Schroeder as a Melton replacement, he's not an off-ball player, and he's not really a defensive stopper like Melton either. So he just never made a ton of sense next to Steph Curry. I'm not really sure why they've been trying to push this like they did with Chris Paul last year, where Chris Paul was on the same he was the backup to Curry, but they would play them both together. You don't need an all-star replacement, an all-star backup, or not all-star equivalent, but you don't need a super high-end backup for Steph Curry. He's been playing 36 minutes a game for the most part in games where you are competitive. They really should be looking at a guy who's going to be just a full-time 2 for them. They've since had to go back to Buddy Hield as the starting 2 guard. And then finishing off with the Washington Wizards, if I can do this. 6-40 on the season. 0-11, 0-11 since the last update. They are 15th in the Eastern Conference on a 15-game losing streak. Kyle Kuzma is done deferring. It's over. It's over. Just like this video. Bye, guys.